Hey, it's been a while. I took a break for a little while, which was why the last couple of months have just been me posting live videos and stuff that I went to from concerts. By the way, I went to Knotfest in March. That was pretty cool. Might make a video on that. But this is my first real video for a couple of months. I think the last thing I posted was my Describing Metal Bands 2 video. Nice to be back. I just need to talk about something that's kind of been bothering me in the music scene for the last couple of years, so let's get on into it. Hopefully I don't bore you. Asking Alexandria recently announced they're releasing a new single titled Dark Void, releasing on May 12th. The song isn't out yet when this video gets released, but it sounds like they're going back to their heavier sound, which kind of got me thinking. It got me thinking about how fans treat a band's old sound compared to what they're putting out now. I made a short video about this on Instagram about how bands don't really go back to the format that made them famous for a couple of reasons. This video is just an expanded version of that video. So ladies and gentlemen, this is why I think change in a band's sound is good. I only have one main example of when a band I like becomes so incredibly stale over the years that when they release new music, I don't get excited as much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes talking about Nickelback. Yeah, I like Nickelback. Stop crying. Every single Nickelback album since 2003's The Long Road has followed a very specific format. Each album since then has had 11 tracks. And I've noticed they all follow a specific pattern. The first two songs of that album are usually the heaviest, but then they transition into the softest song or the ballad of the album. For example, on the band's latest album, Get Rolling, which, by the way, what is this album cover? The first two tracks, San Quentin and Skinny Little Missy, are the two heaviest songs on the album. Those two tracks are then followed by the song Those Days. The album before it, which was 2017's Feed the Machine, opened with the title track, Coin for the Ferryman, and then followed the ballad, Son on Fire. Now, if we're talking about quote-unquote number 3 ballads by Nickelback, the same can be said on No Fixed Address with What Are You Waiting For, Here and Now with When We Stand Together, Dark Horse with Gotta Be Somebody, All the Right Reasons with Photograph, and then The Long Road with Someday. It's Future Ben here. I noticed that when I was editing the video, I forgot to bring up one point. After those 2 to 3 tracks of predictability, so to speak, the albums kind of have filler tracks, and then by around track 7 or 8, it goes back to the heavy bit, which turns into the heavy part of the second half of the album. It's most noted in Here and Now, No Fixed Address, and Feed the Machine. My point is that every single album since 2003 has become so incredibly formulaic because either they or their label realized that that was what was going to sell. Sure, it made them more successful, but in my personal opinion, it made me lose interest over time. This is why I defend Metallica's stylistic changes from everything they made in the 80s to the Black Album and then to the Load/Reload era. Whether you thought those albums were good or bad, you can't really lie that at the time, that's what kept things interesting, not knowing what was going to come next. Moving on to the other side of the spectrum, bands like Asking Alexandria, Slipknot, and even Linkin Park when they were still active didn't really make an album that sounded like the last one. And for the sake of time, let's look at Asking. They haven't made an album that sounds identical to their previous body of work. Each Asking Alexandria album has different qualities that make them who they are, for better and for meh. Now, the reason why I brought up Asking's new song in the beginning is, although it sounds heavier, they're not going to make Stand Up and Scream again. For 2 reasons. 1, like I said in my Instagram video, bands evolve and they don't want to make the same thing over and over again. And secondly, Danny kind of just confirmed it straight up. And it's not just Asking. They're not going to make Stand Up and Scream again. Bring Me the Horizons won't make Count Your Blessings again. If Linkin Park became active again, they weren't going to make Hybrid Theory again. And your ex-girlfriend's not going to take you back. Fix yourself, then go back on Tinder. My point is, sure, you can miss the good old days of the band's first album. If you want to listen to it, it's there. Go for your life. But what you have to understand as well is that they're also human beings. They have emotions, they listen to different music than what they were listening to back then, and they can also write about certain events in their lives that changed them as a person. Take, for instance, Gravity by Bullet for My Valentine. The band's vocalist, Matt Tuck, had been dealing with the split from his wife at the time that they were making the album, which I actually think that the relationship has been amended, so kudos to you, Matt. So therefore, the lyrical content became much more personal than previous albums. With that came softer songs, such as The Very Last Time and Breathe Underwater. Naturally, as a result, some fans saw it as a betrayal that they thought that they were abandoning albums such as The Poison, Scream Aim Fire, and even Fever. But in all honesty, if we're talking about Bullet for My Valentine, they've redeemed themselves. Which leads me to my last point, the fans. Yes, we're allowed to not like new music that a band puts out. For example, I don't like Father of All by Green Day. Like a House on Fire isn't my favorite album. I didn't like One More Light when it came out. Although, given circumstances, I could see where Chester was coming from. But it gets to the point where people demand that they go back to the old stuff where it starts to become a problem. I am a firm believer that bands owe fans all. They don't need to do anything for you because it's their band. They'll do what they want, when they want, and how they want. And if they're doing it at the expense of losing some diehard fans, at least they're doing it by making the music that they want to make. For example, when Chester Bennington went off at fans who were bashing Linkin Park when One More Light came out, I kind of understood where he was coming from. He was rightfully upset that the album wasn't respected because, yeah, it's not Hybrid Theory and it's not Meteora. Yes, One More Light is my least favorite Linkin Park album, but tastes change and bands change whether you like to believe it or not. With that being said, everyone is allowed an opinion. And if you're an aspiring musician, just because someone has an opinion doesn't mean you should take it to heart. Just make what you want to make, and if you like it, that's all that matters. Okay, I know that sounded like a motivational TED talk at the end, but my point is, let bands be a band, and if you don't like the new stuff, the old stuff's there, go nuts. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. See ya.